The television courtroom had never witnessed such a moment of pure, unfiltered entitlement meeting its absolute nuclear destruction. Trevor Ashford III, a 19-year-old trust fund heir with a $4.2 million inheritance and the kind of smug arrogance that could only come from never hearing the word no in his entire privileged life, stood in Judge Judy's courtroom with his designer suit, his 8,000 Rolex, and a contemptuous smirk that suggested he believed himself completely untouchable. His perfectly groomed appearance screamed old money and unchecked power as the words that would obliterate his family's reputation forever began forming on his entitled lips. "My father will end your career, you insignificant little judge. Do you have any idea who the Ashford family is? One phone call and you'll be finished." The silence that followed was absolutely catastrophic. Every single person in that courtroom felt the atmosphere shift from professional legal proceedings to something far more explosive, something that would be replayed over 180 million times across every social media platform imaginable, something that would trigger the largest financial fraud investigation in Connecticut history and expose a criminal conspiracy involving political corruption, money laundering, and systematic exploitation that stretched back 3 generations. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed into the kind of death stare that had made billionaire CEOs wet themselves on national television. But there was something else there, too. A slight smile, the kind that only appears when someone has been waiting years for the perfect moment to spring a trap. But what happened next would cost Trevor Ashford III his entire inheritance, result in his father's arrest by federal agents live on television, destroy a century-old family empire built on fraud and corruption, trigger congressional investigations into judicial bribery and political money laundering, and expose a network of criminal activity so extensive it would take federal prosecutors 4 years to fully untangle and prosecute all the co-conspirators involved. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Something that will leave you speechless when you understand the full scope of what Judge Judy had been planning. Trevor didn't just lose his case. He didn't just get embarrassed on national television in front of millions of viewers. What Judge Judy did to him and his entire family in the next 14 minutes was so devastatingly brutal, so righteously calculated, so legally perfect, that it became the most satisfying courtroom takedown in television history, shared over 180 million times with the hashtags Daddy Can't Save You and hashtag Rich Kid Destroyed trending for 11 consecutive days across every platform. We're talking about a teenager who walked into that courtroom thinking his family name was armor that protected him from consequences, thinking he could threaten America's toughest judge with his father's money and connections, only to discover that Judge Judy had been building a case against his family for 6 months and had been waiting for the perfect public moment to coordinate with federal prosecutors to bring down an entire criminal dynasty. The case seemed simple enough on the surface, just a dispute between a rich college student and a local auto body shop owner over damages to Trevor's 90,000 Mercedes-Benz that he claimed were caused by negligent repair work. But what the audience didn't know, what Trevor himself didn't realize until it was far too late to protect himself or his family, was that Judge Judy had already coordinated with the FBI, the IRS, the Connecticut Attorney General's Office, and federal prosecutors to use this exact courtroom confrontation as the public trigger for simultaneous raids on Ashford family properties, businesses, and bank accounts that were happening at that very moment. Before we show you the exact moment when this entitled rich kid threatened America's most feared television judge and instantly regretted every single privileged decision that brought him to that courtroom, make sure you hit that like button right now if you believe that wealthy people who think their money makes them above the law deserve to be exposed and destroyed on national television. Subscribe so you never miss these explosive courtroom moments where entitled rich kids who think their daddy's money can buy them out of anything finally meet someone who won't be intimidated and isn't afraid to coordinate with federal law enforcement to bring down entire criminal families. Trust me, what you're about to witness in the next 30 minutes will restore your faith that justice still matters, that money can't buy everything, and that Judge Judy is still the undisputed queen of destroying people who threaten her with power they don't actually have. Trevor Ashford III had never faced real consequences for anything in his entire 19 years of existence. Born into the Ashford family dynasty, one of Connecticut's oldest and wealthiest families, with a fortune built on real estate development, political connections, and what they called strategic business relationships, but what federal investigators would later prove was systematic corruption and fraud. Trevor had grown up believing that rules were suggestions that applied to poor people, but never to anyone with the Ashford name. His childhood had been a parade of expensive private schools where his family's donations ensured he never failed, despite rarely attending class, exclusive country clubs where he learned that ordinary people existed to serve the wealthy, and luxury vacations where he developed his signature contempt for anyone who had to work for a living. By the time Trevor turned 16, he had already accumulated 3 drunk driving arrests that disappeared from his record thanks to his father's connections, 2 sexual assault accusations from classmates that were settled with NDAs and cash payments, and a reputation at his prep school as the most entitled, cruel, and untouchable student in the institution's 120-year history. His father, Trevor Ashford Jr., had taught him from an early age that the Ashford family controlled judges, politicians, and police through a combination of campaign donations, strategic bribes disguised as consulting fees, and the implicit threat of economic retaliation against anyone who dared cross them. Trevor's introduction to the legal system had come at 17 when he crashed his Porsche into a family's minivan while driving 95 miles in a residential neighborhood, sending 3 children to the hospital with serious injuries. The police report had initially recommended vehicular assault charges and possible jail time, but within 48 hours, the charges had been reduced to a simple traffic citation with a $500 fine. The family whose children were injured had received a visit from one of the Ashford family's attorneys, offering them $200,000 to sign an NDA and agree not to pursue any further legal action. When the father had initially refused, wanting justice rather than money, he had received a second visit explaining that his small plumbing business had suddenly failed multiple building inspections and his commercial loans were being called in immediately. The message was clear: take the money and stay quiet, or the Ashford family would destroy everything he had built. The family had taken the money, and Trevor had learned the most important lesson his father wanted him to understand. Money and power meant never having to face consequences. Now, at 19, Trevor was enrolled at Yale University purely because of his family's $8 million donation to build a new library wing, despite having SAT scores that wouldn't have qualified him for community college and a high school GPA that his father's money had artificially inflated to acceptable levels. He drove a $90,000 Mercedes-Benz S-Class that his father had given him for his 19th birthday, wore custom suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and treated everyone around him with the casual cruelty of someone who had never been told that other people's feelings or rights mattered. The incident that brought Trevor to Judge Judy's courtroom had started 3 months earlier when he had taken his Mercedes to Rodriguez Auto Body, a small family-owned repair shop in New Haven, to fix minor damage from a parking lot incident. Carlos Rodriguez, a 52-year-old immigrant from Mexico who had built his business over 25 years of honest, skilled work, had done an excellent job repairing the minor scratches and dents for $3,800. But when Trevor came to pick up the car, he had immediately started complaining that the repair work was substandard, that the paint didn't match perfectly, that the shop had taken too long, and that he shouldn't have to pay the full amount. What Carlos didn't know was that this was Trevor's standard operating procedure: take services from small businesses, complain about imaginary problems, refuse to pay, and dare them to sue someone with the Ashford family's legal resources. Trevor had pulled this scam on 12 previous businesses over the past 2 years, never paying more than 50% of what he actually owed, and forcing business owners to either accept the partial payment or spend thousands in legal fees trying to collect the rest. But Carlos Rodriguez was different from Trevor's previous victims. He had documentation of every step of the repair process, photographs showing the car's condition before and after repairs, and Trevor's own signed approval of the completed work before he suddenly claimed it was defective. When Trevor had refused to pay the full $3,800, offering only $1,500 and threatening to have his father's attorneys destroy Carlos's business if he didn't accept it, Carlos had done something none of Trevor's previous victims had dared to do. He filed a lawsuit and fought back. What neither Trevor nor Carlos knew was that this lawsuit would become the vehicle for exposing crimes far more serious than a rich kid stiffing a mechanic on a repair bill. Judge Judy's research team had flagged Trevor's case because his name had appeared in connection with 12 other small claims disputes over the past 2 years, all following the same pattern of services received, payment refused, and threats of legal retaliation. That pattern alone would have made the case interesting television, but when Judge Judy's team had started digging deeper into the Ashford family background, they had discovered something that made this case far more significant than typical rich kid entitlement. The Ashford family wasn't just wealthy. They were criminals who had spent 3 generations building a fortune on corruption, fraud, and systematic exploitation disguised as legitimate business. Judge Judy's investigation had uncovered that Trevor Ashford Jr., the father, ran a real estate development empire that was actually a complex money laundering operation for organized crime. The family's strategic business relationships included bribing judges to rule in favor of Ashford properties in zoning disputes, paying off building inspectors to ignore safety violations, and using political donations to secure no-bid government contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But the Ashford family's most profitable criminal enterprise was what federal investigators called legal extortion, using their wealth and connections to destroy small businesses and individuals who refused to cooperate with their schemes. The pattern was always the same. Identify a vulnerable target, create a legal dispute, threaten complete financial destruction, and force settlements that included NDAs preventing victims from warning others. Over 3 decades, the Ashford family had extracted an estimated $47 million through this systematic extortion, destroying countless lives while hiding behind the veneer of legitimate business disputes and legal proceedings. Judge Judy had discovered all of this through 6 months of investigation that she had conducted in coordination with federal prosecutors who had been building a RICO case against the Ashford family for 3 years. The prosecutors had evidence, witnesses, and documentation of criminal activity spanning decades, but they needed the perfect moment to execute simultaneous raids on Ashford properties to prevent the family from destroying evidence or fleeing the country. When Trevor's case landed on Judge Judy's desk, prosecutors saw the opportunity they had been waiting for, a live television moment that would distract the Ashford family while federal agents executed search warrants and arrests. What made this setup absolutely perfect was Trevor's own arrogance. His father had advised him to settle the case quietly, but Trevor had insisted on going to court because he wanted to publicly humiliate Carlos Rodriguez on television and send a message to other small business owners about what happened when you dared to challenge the Ashford family. Trevor had even bragged on social media about how he was going to destroy some poor mechanic on Judge Judy and show everyone that the Ashford name meant power. He had no idea that his public appearance on television would provide the perfect alibi for his father, who would be at home watching his son's courtroom triumph when FBI agents came through his door with arrest warrants. He had no idea that Judge Judy had been coordinating with federal prosecutors to time her exposure of Trevor's behavior to coincide exactly with the raids happening simultaneously across Connecticut. And he had absolutely no idea that his father's legendary power and connections meant nothing when facing federal charges that included conspiracy, racketeering, money laundering, bribery, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. The courtroom that Wednesday morning was packed with an unusual mix of audience members. Regular Judge Judy fans who came expecting typical small claims drama sat alongside plainclothes federal agents positioned strategically throughout the gallery, ready to provide security if Trevor or his supporters became violent when the trap was sprung. Carlos Rodriguez sat in the plaintiff's chair, nervous and intimidated, clutching his folder of documentation and praying that somehow justice would prevail despite facing someone with the Ashford family's resources. Trevor strutted into the courtroom like he owned it, his designer suit perfectly tailored, his Rolex catching the studio lights, his expression broadcasting pure contempt for everyone present. He was accompanied by one of his father's attorneys, a slick corporate lawyer who had made millions defending the Ashford family's criminal enterprises, both of them confident that this would be an easy victory over some immigrant mechanic who didn't understand how power really worked in America. Judge Judy watched Trevor's entrance with the calm patience of a predator who had already set the perfect trap and was simply waiting for her prey to walk into it. She had been a judge for over 40 years, had handled more than 20,000 cases, and had developed an almost supernatural ability to spot entitled rich kids who had never faced consequences. Trevor Ashford III set off every single one of her alarm bells the moment he walked through those doors with his arrogant posture and his dismissive glance at Carlos Rodriguez. The opening moments of the case played out exactly as Trevor expected. Carlos presented his case clearly and professionally, explaining the repair work he had done, showing photographs of the completed repairs, and presenting Trevor's own signed document approving the work. His voice shook slightly, intimidated by Trevor's expensive lawyer and the implicit threat of the Ashford family's power, but his evidence was solid and his testimony was honest. Then it was Trevor's turn, and his opening statement was a masterclass in entitled arrogance that would become one of the most hated moments in courtroom television history. "Your Honor," Trevor began with a condescending smile that made it clear he didn't respect Judge Judy or the proceedings. "This is a simple case of incompetent work by someone who clearly doesn't understand quality standards. My Mercedes-Benz is a $90,000 vehicle, and this shop," he gestured dismissively at Carlos, "treated it like some cheap Honda. The paint doesn't match, the body panels are misaligned, and frankly, I don't think this shop has the expertise to work on luxury vehicles. I'm being generous by offering to pay anything at all, but I certainly won't pay full price for substandard work." Judge Judy's expression remained neutral, but there was a glint in her eyes that experienced viewers recognized as trouble brewing. "Mr. Ashford, do you have any evidence that the work was substandard? Any photographs showing the problems you claim exist? Any expert evaluation proving the paint doesn't match?" Trevor's laugh was dismissive and dripping with contempt. "I don't need an expert to tell me when work is bad, Your Honor. I know quality when I see it, and this wasn't it." Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "Actually, Mr. Ashford, in a court of law, you do need evidence. That's how justice works. You can't just claim something is defective without proving it." Trevor's expression shifted from condescending amusement to irritation. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I'm not sure you understand how this works. The Ashford family has been dealing with legal matters for generations, and we know our rights. I don't have to pay for work that doesn't meet my standards, and I certainly don't have to provide evidence to justify my decisions to some television judge." The audience gasped at Trevor's disrespect, but Judge Judy's expression didn't change. She was letting Trevor reveal himself, giving him enough rope to hang himself with, while federal agents coordinated final positions for the raids happening at that exact moment. "Mr. Rodriguez," Judge Judy turned to Carlos, "do you have photographs of the completed work?" Carlos pulled out a folder and handed it to the bailiff, who brought it to Judge Judy. She examined the photographs carefully, comparing before and after images that clearly showed excellent repair work, perfect paint matching, and properly aligned body panels. The repair job was flawless, exactly what anyone would expect from a skilled professional with 25 years of experience. Judge Judy looked back at Trevor. "Mr. Ashford, these photographs show excellent work. The paint matching is perfect, the body panels are properly aligned, and you even signed this document saying you approved the completed repairs. Would you like to explain why you signed approval if the work was so terrible?" Trevor's face flushed with anger at being questioned. "I signed that because I wanted to get out of there. I was going to have real professionals evaluate the work later, and when I did, I discovered it was substandard. Look, Your Honor, I don't have time for this. I'm offering $500 to settle this, which is more than generous for the quality of work provided. Mr. Rodriguez should take the offer and be grateful the Ashford family is being so reasonable." Judge Judy's voice took on that edge that regular viewers knew meant someone was about to be destroyed. "Grateful? Mr. Rodriguez should be grateful that you're offering to pay 40% of what you owe him for work you approved." Trevor stood up suddenly, his arrogance transforming into barely controlled rage. "Yes, grateful. Do you know who my family is? Do you understand what the Ashford name means in Connecticut? My father owns judges, owns politicians, owns half the state. One phone call and we can make anyone's life miserable. This mechanic should be thanking me for even walking into his pathetic little shop." The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs as Trevor's lawyer desperately tried to get him to sit down and stop talking. But Trevor was too angry to control himself. Years of never facing consequences had convinced him that he could say anything without repercussions. Judge Judy stood up from her bench, something she rarely did, and her voice carried the weight of 40 years of judicial authority. "Mr. Ashford, you need to sit down, control yourself, and show some respect in my courtroom. I don't care who your father is or how much money your family has. In here, you follow the rules like everyone else." And that's when Trevor Ashford III made the fatal mistake that would destroy everything his family had built over 3 generations. He pointed his finger directly at Judge Judy and said with venomous contempt, "My father will end your career, you insignificant little judge. Do you have any idea who the Ashford family is? We've been ending people like you for decades. One phone call and you'll be finished. Your show will be canceled, your reputation will be destroyed, and you'll regret ever crossing someone with real power. You're nothing but a television personality pretending to be important, and my family will make sure everyone knows it." The silence that followed was absolutely apocalyptic. Trevor's lawyer had his head in his hands, knowing that his client had just committed career suicide on national television. Carlos Rodriguez looked terrified, certain that the Ashford family would now destroy him even more thoroughly than before. The federal agents in the audience sat forward, ready to provide protection if needed. And Judge Judy smiled. It wasn't a warm smile or a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting 6 months for exactly this moment, who had coordinated with federal prosecutors to spring the perfect trap, and who was about to deploy evidence that would destroy the Ashford family forever. "Mr. Ashford," Judge Judy said with deadly calm, "you just threatened a sitting judge on national television, but before I hold you in contempt, let me show you something interesting." She reached for her phone on the bench, a move that confused everyone in the courtroom, because judges never used phones during proceedings. "You said your father will end my career with one phone call. Well, I'd like to make a phone call too. Let's call your father right now and see if he's as powerful as you think he is." Trevor's eyes went wide with confusion and the first hint of genuine fear. "What? You can't just call my father. This is ridiculous." Judge Judy was already dialing, her phone connected to the courtroom speaker system. "Oh, I absolutely can call your father, Mr. Ashford. In fact, I think he's going to be very interested in what's happening right now." The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. The entire courtroom held its breath. On the 4th ring, someone picked up, but it wasn't Trevor Ashford Jr.'s voice that came through the speakers. "FBI? Who is this?" The courtroom exploded in shocked gasps and confused murmurs. Trevor's face went from angry red to deathly pale in an instant. His lawyer stood up looking desperately confused. Judge Judy's voice remained perfectly calm. "This is Judge Judith Scheindlin. To whom am I speaking?" "This is Special Agent Rodriguez with the FBI. We're currently executing search warrants at the Ashford family residence. Mr. Trevor Ashford Jr. is being placed under arrest. How can I help you, Judge?" Trevor collapsed back into his chair, his entire body shaking as he realized what was happening. Judge Judy continued speaking to the FBI agent with clinical precision. "Agent Rodriguez, I have Trevor Ashford III in my courtroom. He just threatened me on national television and claimed his father would end my career. I wanted him to understand that his father is currently unavailable to make any phone calls on his behalf." The FBI agent's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. "That's correct, Judge. Mr. Ashford Jr. is being charged with conspiracy, racketeering, money laundering, bribery, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of wire fraud. He won't be making any phone calls except to his attorney, and even those will be monitored. We're also executing warrants at 17 Ashford family properties and businesses simultaneously. This is the culmination of a 3-year investigation." Judge Judy looked directly at Trevor, whose face had gone from pale to absolutely gray. "Thank you, Agent Rodriguez. Please tell Mr. Ashford Jr. that his son says hello and wanted him to know he threatened a federal judge on television. Will do, Judge. We'll be adding witness intimidation charges to the list. Have a good day. The line went dead, and the courtroom erupted in absolute chaos. Trevor was shaking violently. His lawyer was frantically making calls, and the audience was screaming in shock and excitement. The federal agents positioned throughout the gallery moved forward to secure positions around Trevor in case he tried to flee. Judge Judy let the chaos continue for exactly 1 minute before bringing down her gavel with a crack that silenced everyone instantly. "Mr. Ashford," she began, her voice colder than Arctic ice, "let me explain what just happened, because I want to make sure you understand exactly how completely your arrogance has destroyed you." Trevor couldn't speak, couldn't move, could barely breathe as Judge Judy systematically explained how his entire world had just collapsed. "For the past 6 months, I have been working with federal prosecutors who have been building a case against your family's criminal enterprises. Your father's real estate business is a money laundering operation. Your family's political donations are bribes designed to corrupt judges and politicians. Your family's business practices constitute a criminal racketeering enterprise under RICO statutes. Federal investigators have evidence of your family bribing judges, intimidating witnesses, obstructing justice, and running what amounts to a criminal organization disguised as legitimate business." She pulled out a thick folder, the evidence she had been compiling. But prosecutors needed the perfect moment to execute simultaneous raids on Ashford properties to prevent your family from destroying evidence or fleeing. When your case came to my courtroom, we saw the opportunity. Your father thought you were safely appearing on television while he was at home. He had no idea that your television appearance was deliberately scheduled to give federal agents the perfect window to execute their warrants. Trevor's lawyer tried to intervene. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. You can't coordinate with prosecutors to trap defendants." Judge Judy's response was swift. "Actually, Counselor, federal judges coordinate with prosecutors all the time when executing complex operations against criminal organizations. And that's what your clients are. A criminal organization. Every legal proceeding your firm has handled for the Ashford family over the past decade is now under investigation. I suggest you hire your own attorney." She turned back to Trevor. "As for you, Mr. Ashford, let's discuss your specific crimes. You've defrauded 12 businesses over 2 years using the exact same pattern. Receive services, refuse payment, threaten legal retaliation if they don't accept pennies on the dollar. That's wire fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. Your threats against me on television constitute intimidation of a federal official, which is a federal felony carrying up to 20 years in prison." Trevor finally found his voice, weak and desperate. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean any of that. I was just angry. Please, I'll pay whatever Mr. Rodriguez wants. I'll apologize. Just, please don't do this." Judge Judy's expression showed zero sympathy. "Now you want to apologize? Now you want to pay? After you threatened to destroy me and everyone else who dared cross your family? That's not how justice works, Mr. Ashford. You don't get to threaten people and then apologize when you realize you've been caught." She pulled out another document. "I have testimony from 8 of your previous victims, all of whom were too afraid to fight back against your family's threats until federal investigators offered them protection. Each one describes the exact same pattern of behavior: your arrogance, your threats, your father's power used to intimidate them into accepting pennies while you kept their hard-earned money. I also have your social media posts from this morning where you bragged about destroying some poor mechanic on Judge Judy and showing everyone what Ashford power looks like. Congratulations, Mr. Ashford. You're showing everyone exactly what Ashford power looks like: criminal fraud being exposed on national television." The devastation was total and complete. Trevor was sobbing now, his entire privileged existence crumbling in real time on national television. Judge Judy delivered her final verdict with the cold satisfaction of justice perfectly executed. Judgment for the plaintiff, Carlos Rodriguez, in the full amount of $3,800 plus punitive damages of $50,000 for your fraudulent behavior, plus legal fees. You will pay this immediately. Furthermore, I am holding you in contempt of court for threatening a judge. That's 30 days in jail and a $10,000 fine. Additionally, I am referring your threats against me to federal prosecutors for charges of witness intimidation and threatening a federal official. Finally, I am ordering that all your previous victims be contacted by federal investigators to determine the full scope of your fraud. Every business you've defrauded will have the opportunity to pursue charges and restitution. She paused, looking at Trevor with something that might have been pity if it weren't mixed with contempt. You walked in here thinking your father's money and power made you untouchable. You threatened me, believing I would be intimidated by the Ashford name. Instead, you handed federal prosecutors everything they needed to add additional charges to your family's indictment. Your arrogance didn't protect you, Mr. Ashford. It destroyed you. The gavel came down with finality. Bailiff, take Mr. Ashford into custody. Case dismissed. As federal agents moved forward to take Trevor away, Judge Judy made one final call on her phone, this one to the lead prosecutor coordinating the Ashford family raids. It's done, she said simply. Trevor confessed to threatening me on camera and implicated his father's power structure. You have everything you need. The prosecutor's response was audible through the speakers. Thank you, Judge. We've secured 17 properties, frozen all Ashford family accounts, and arrested Trevor Ashford Jr., along with 6 co-conspirators. This is the biggest takedown of political corruption in Connecticut history, and you just gave us the final piece we needed. Within hours, the video exploded across every platform, reaching 100 million views before the end of the day. The moment Trevor threatened Judge Judy became the most shared courtroom clip in history. The hashtag #DaddyCan'tSave. You trended globally as millions celebrated seeing ultimate entitlement meet ultimate justice. The Ashford family's empire collapsed completely. Trevor Ashford Jr. was convicted on 47 counts and sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. Trevor III received 12 years for his role in the fraud scheme. The family's assets, $340 million in real estate, businesses, and accounts, were seized and used to compensate their hundreds of victims. Carlos Rodriguez became a hero, using his settlement to expand his business and hire employees from immigrant communities. The Ashford family name, once synonymous with power, became synonymous with corruption destroyed. Judge Judy's coordination with federal prosecutors was celebrated as innovative justice, leading to new protocols for exposing powerful criminals through public proceedings. Trevor's final words, as he was led away, were captured on camera. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Judge Judy's response. "You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. That's not remorse. That's consequences. If this total destruction of entitled wealth restored your faith in justice, smash that subscribe button. Share this with everyone who needs to see that money can't buy escape from real accountability." Comment: should wealthy criminals face harsher sentences? Your voice matters. The day Trevor Ashford III threatened Judge Judy and learned his father couldn't save him will be remembered forever as the moment when privilege met justice and lost spectacularly.